RHA. I'm here because I'm an advocate for increased capacity in governance. I'm a civil servant. My husband was a civil servant. I'm not here because I want to disagree with you, government people. I'm here because I want to say, let's increase our capacity. And in that sense, I'm on the same page as Colorado's Affordable Housing Transformational Task Force, which stated Colorado has a once-in-a-generation opportunity to transform its affordable housing system. I've done a lot of political organizing in this area, and I've talked to folks before coming here who were like, this is just going to be neoliberal trickle-down bullshit. It's going to be the same old, same old. And I just want to point out that our area voted 65% for Bernie Sanders, and I would really love for you guys to say to the millionaires and billionaires, they can't have it all. We had spoken of an executive director as a person who could increase our capacity. I don't understand the difference between the executive director position that we had advertised and failed to fill and the contract we have now, unless it's in terms of development. But you guys do have a contract in place with the Economic Development Alliance, so I just want to encourage you guys to continue to think big. The state is saying this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to transform affordable housing. Why not transform what our RHA is providing? Why not still find an executive director? I'd like to see this RHA join the huge number of other RHAs in our state who have a portfolio of properties. And I'd love for the people who say, don't bother going to a governmental meeting, Lori, because they're just going to do trickle down. I'd love for them to be wrong. And I'd love for you guys to prove them wrong.
Thank you, Lori. Did we have someone else come in during that? No? Oh, okay. Approval of the agenda. So as the agenda sits with moving G1 up underneath E1, does that look good for everybody? Nodded by nod of head. Any other additions or changes?
Yeah. Madam Chair, I would move that we approve the agenda with the edits.
With the edit? Oh, yes.
I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Consent agenda. So item number 1 is the December minutes, and item number 2 is the November financial statements. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Does that include item C, which is the resolution 2023?
Yes.
Yes. Item C? No, actually, that's going to come later in case Mark needs to say something about it.
So we're doing a consent 1 and a consent 2?
Yeah, A and B, the December, November minutes, and then, no, I'm just moving G1 up underneath there. I'm not putting it on the consent.
Oh, I see.
Just putting it below the consent.
I
Sorry.
misunderstood.
No, that was my misspeak, sorry.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as stated.
Excellent. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to G1, Resolution 2023-01, Budget Appropriation. Mark, did you want to have a conversation about that?
Yes, thank you. I worked with Michelle and JJ on this resolution. We should have probably had this at our last meeting when we adopted the budget, but we're going to go ahead and submit it to you now for approval. This is basically appropriating the funds that are within our budget. It's a big number, but that number, that $800,000+ amount, I'm trying to
We're having a little bit of trouble understanding you, so I don't know if it's speaking louder or more clearly. I'm not sure which.
okay, you want me to start over?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so resolution number 2023-01 is a resolution appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies and for the purpose set forth below for the Regional Housing Alliance of Appropriation, Colorado 2023 budget year. We should have passed this resolution with the adoption of the budget last 2022, but we did not. So this resolution appropriates $824,000 for the 2023 budget. And that number is sizable because it has grant funding, anticipated grant funding in it. It's part of the operating expenses. Any questions?
No, I appreciate you all as we brought EDA on board on working on this and, giving us confidence in what was occurring. So thank you, Mark and everybody.
Welcome. Thanks to EDA staff on this too.
I'll make a motion in favor of resolution number 2023-01.
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Right?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, thank you. I want to note that Eva Henson has joined us from the City of Durango, Housing Division Manager. Thank you. All right, so we're on then to Alliance updates. Mike, do you want to take charge of this one?
Yes, thank you. First and foremost, I'd like to introduce Sarah Tober. We've hired Sarah as a employee with benefits at the Economic Development Alliance. Very excited to have her. Her sole responsibility will be the RHA and housing issues related to the RHA. So we're really pleased about that. Sarah already has an office. We were able to sign a lease. The copy of the lease and the addendum, because we had to put some language in there that was Tober law related to the lease prior to getting signed. We got the lease at a pretty favorable rate of $350 a month in the chamber building, and we have already turned up internet. So the RHA now has its own internet, its own phone number, and its own presence there. We'll probably use a PO box as opposed to the physical address, being that there's multiple organizations that share that office, including the chamber, the Alliance, and now the RHA. Well, we couldn't get a PO box number without having proof of being there. So instead of in front of the other. Oh, we did. Yeah, excellent. Okay, that got taken care of. Great. So from an operational standpoint, I think we have presence now, which is great. I'll let Sarah talk about the. I think it's further down. Yeah, we won't get to that yet. But I'd like for Sarah to maybe introduce herself to the folks that haven't met her yet, and maybe talk about her background and skill sets and why it lends itself to what we're doing here.
Hi, everyone. Yes, Sarah Tober. I have built a career on communications and advocacy, specifically around community resilience. So I have experience in everything from policy at the statewide level to the county, city level as well. One of my last things that I did out of Austin was to pass 2 bills in the Texas legislature in 2021. One was Senate Bill 1090, which established that communities could pursue dark sky lighting standards and certification. And then Senate Bill 941, which enabled the state of Texas to become a scenic byway state, the last state to join the scenic byway program. So those are some of the things that I've been passionate about. I have worked in housing a little bit. I worked for a student housing developer who was publicly traded. And I've also worked with REITs and real estate as well. So moved to Durango a year ago after visiting here for 20 years and falling in love with it and working so hard to find a way to make it out here. This is a perfect place for us to raise our 4-year-old son. So happy to be here.
Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In terms of the Catalyst Fund, there's not much to update. We're still waiting on a commitment, and it's probably going to be several weeks, if not a couple of months, before we get a large commitment from this foundation that we're working with. They do have an executive committee meeting the first week of February, and they have a proposal from us in terms of what that means of participating on the committee, how the funds could be, the terms of the funds, how they could be put into escrow until projects are identified, et cetera, et cetera. Happy to show that proposal once it's finalized and edited. So it's in front of them for feedback. And then I'd be more than happy to socialize that to you guys to see how we're soliciting for grant monies. The opportunity with this specific foundation is between $1 million and probably $1.5 million, which was substantial. I'm not exactly sure that we're in line to get all of those monies. Our ask is for all of it, so that they don't partition the monies into multiple initiatives, which I think, especially if it's housing that they're focused on, which they've identified as the largest community need. And that way we're not diluting the effort but we'll see how that goes. Optimistic, but I can, again, provide that proposal to this board probably at the next board meeting. In terms of website development, I'll go ahead and let Sarah talk about that. There is a contract in your board packet with SIPA. It is a state entity that does government web development. So that allows us to get a .org web URL, .gov, I'm sorry, .gov URL. We have solicited a designer to work with SIPA so that it's not a out-of-the-box standardized website. I think between the two of them, we can get a good framework and then have it customized with a developer or a designer and come up with a really good product. One of the things I wanted to ask the board and see if the board would consider is, as we think about the brand that we want to put forward and the look and feel of the website, yes, it's a governmental entity and we want to be straightforward, but it might be worth us presenting a couple of different logos to you guys that I think are more representational of the community and the townships, the city and the county. When I look at how it's represented today, it's not really customized and it's it probably served its purpose back in the day, but I'd like to modernize that and maybe give the board a couple of things. I don't want to spend a ton of time in doing like brand development and all that. This is not a frivolous exercise. This is just something that we can use moving forward. That's a little bit more updated as we put some effort and some energy into a web design.
So I have two questions for you, Michael. On the contract for the chamber and the contract for SIPA, you need a signature on that.
Yes.
And so we need the board probably to vote.
On the contract for SIPA, yes. On the lease agreement, I think that, yes.
It says RHA.
Yeah, that is correct. 100% correct.
So let's step back for just a minute and have you all had a chance to look at the contract with the chamber? And so is there any discussion or a motion?
Go ahead, Mike.
Move we approve the contract for the leasing space from the Chamber of Commerce.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we can sign that afterwards.
Okay.
And then the contract for SIPA, any conversation or motion on that?
The SIPA, I think we're looking for agreement. I think the Alliance, since the Alliance is providing the web services to the RHA.
I think when I looked at the actual agreement though, it had the RHA, I just had it, now I just lost it.
It's right here.
Michelle, if you're online, can you clarify that?
Looking for the signature page.
It says La Plata Regional.
Because this contract does say it's with the La Plata Regional Housing Alliance, so I don't know.
And that would be fine.
I apologize, Mike. Go ahead. Can you ask that question again?
If the SIPA contract is with the RHA or if the SIPA contract is with the Alliance.
It's with the RHA.
Okay, thank you.
Good. So any discussion or motion on that contract?
The only thing I would say is that the official name, the La Plata Regional Housing Alliance?
No, it's actually laplatahousing.org is
No, the contract.
Yeah, the official name of this entity is the Regional Housing Alliance of La Plata County.
So shouldn't that be on the contract?
It should be changed.
Yeah, thank you.
But the basic contract, do we have any?
I'm good with everything
I
else.
think that was a good catch.
Clark, thank you for pointing that out. The URL that we have selected, I'd like the board to consider that as well.
Yes, we,
Wait, can we go ahead and finish
Yes,
this?
thank you.
Yes, thank you. So is there any further discussion or a motion on the SIPA contract?
Yeah, just clear, I mean, it says whereas neither party is committing funds or required to perform services as part of this agreement. I'm not sure I kind of get it in terms of what we're
That's an
contracting for, we're not paying anything. This is just to be entitled to whatever, take advantage of their connection services, whatever it is that they're doing. I'm not, it's not clear.
That's correct. So I can explain what they provide, Mike. They provide the hosting service, they provide the URL registration, they provide framework that, they have a cookie cutter frameworks that are already developed. And they provide the maintenance and support and security for that URL, for that.
And so the town just, we just migrated away from a SIPA website. And it worked at the time that we needed it, but we needed a little bit more operational. So, I mean, I don't see any issue with the Alliance using that for the Regional Housing Authority. I think it's, or Alliance is a really good start. So at least there'll be somewhere to go.
And it can be migrated. which is the
Yes,
other
it
point.
can be migrated because that's what
Oh,
we've
okay,
done.
that's important.
Yep.
We have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now onward to the URL.
okay. So we, yes, and looking at the other RHAs around the state and some of the best practices, we thought that laplatahhousing.gov would be the best URL to abbreviate everything.
I'm fine with that.
That'll work for you guys. And so if the county starts a housing division, you won't be lost with that? Okay.
There's no risk of that this year, I'll tell you that.
So is this what, if somebody did a search, for example, this is what they would be accessing or trying to find?
We would probably have some keywords that people can search for. For example, La Plata RHA, RHA Durango, RHA Bayfield. You know, we would probably have those terms for search. But if this would be the official URL, and then the way people search is a little bit different than exactly the URL.
Yeah, I guess my thought process is, I mean, a lot of, and I know we're not anywhere near there, but someday maybe we will be, or maybe we will become more of a source of consolidated information about housing in La Plata County. And I'm wondering if when you're searching for, you know, I moved to town, I'm looking for housing. So I'm not going to know there's such a thing as, I may not even think about La Plata being something I would put in a search, or La Plata housing being something I would put in a search, but certainly affordable housing or something like that. So I guess if there's a way that we can, again, have some sort of keyword attractor, if you will, to the site, because I think La Plata County Housing, our Regional Housing Authority is not something very many people would think about searching for.
Well, so when I search for something like that, I would put affordable housing La Plata County or affordable housing Durango or affordable housing Bayfield, and that would bring you directly to that URL.
Well, that's my only question.
Yeah, because if you just put in affordable housing, you're going to end up with nationwide, international.
Yeah.
No, obviously you're going to tie it down geographically, but I don't know that very many people think of La Plata County as being where they're looking for housing.
I think you'd be surprised. Yeah. just because I've had some people recently move here and that's kind of how they look at it, like, you know, I don't know if I can be in Durango, so let's see what else is out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mike, we can spend some time on keyword search and making sure that all of the things that we think people are searching on, that we are grabbing them with the keywords.
Okay.
We can also, and it's probably worth doing, especially when we first launch, is maybe spending just a little bit of money on some keywords so that, you know, those are associated with the website, and it's not a bad idea. And it's not very expensive, especially with the words that we're looking for, because they're very specific.
Like I'd suggest we try to just encompass all the buzzwords that are associated: workforce, affordable,
Bayfield.
housing, you know.
Ignacio.
You guys are creative. It's just, I think we just need to be able to use those things that people are aware of and use.
Got it.
For, they have blanket terms and you know, they mean different things to different people. Let's use them all.
I like the idea because we kind of envision ourselves eventually, as you said, Mike, kind of that network group of housing, like, so you can, we're a one-stop shop and we direct you places and coordinate things. So I think I like that idea.
The only thing I was thinking about, just as we're brainstorming here, I would agree, when I look at La Plata housing, I think of the county. Like I just instantly, like when I'm looking for that, there's no like recognition of the RHA. Like, do you want it to, I mean, I'm just thinking big picture where we're headed as a multi-jurisdictional housing authority or alliance. To me, this doesn't, I don't feel like it represents that necessarily. Like, could it be like RHA housing or just something to tie it back to when we're talking about branding or we're talking about our messaging? I mean, everyone knows the RHA. I mean, at least in the community.
That's true.
So La Plata to me is like a rebranding. Like, I don't feel like that's tied back to the RHA.
So I'm just gonna point this out because I think the comment about RHAs is typically it's an authority. And so if Alliance started with any other letter than an A, it may make sense, but I think too many people are gonna be looking for the authority type of organization and not necessarily an alliance organization at this time. And because I've been in other areas where there really was an RHA, when I first heard the term, I just assumed it was the same organization, which this is not yet. Hopefully it will be at some point. And so I can just see at some point that there's a change in and actually moving to an authority, and then that's where you basically make sure that it probably won't be a SIPA website, it'll probably be something completely different.
Yeah, but to me, La Plata just isn't, I don't think, representing what the alliance is to me. I think it's honing in on something that I think is broad, it's more narrow than broader. I'm just feedback, but.
If I may, we did do some research on some other housing authorities and how they went about it. And for instance, there's a regionalhousingauthority.org. Well, that's actually out of Alaska. There is the Raleigh in Raleigh, North Carolina is Raleigh Housing Authority. So that's rhaonline.com. Denver Housing Authority is denverhousing.org. So what we were thinking with the laplatahousing.gov is that we could also purchase additional URLs that point to that if
There
we
you
would
go.
like.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we can
That would be good.
expand it.
There we go.
But for sake of making momentum here, getting the URL moving, getting the website platform in place and getting the web designer lined up, we wanted to be able to present to the board that we are making some real progress on that.
We can probably secure La Plata RHA.
That would be good.
So,
And keep it in.
so real quick, less is more for me. And so the fewer words you can put in a URL, the easier it is to maintain and type. So I would recommend LPC RHA, just because LPC, really, we can, like you said, you can always go out and get larger names that point to that. That's kind of like what you guys have.
So I'm challenged by that because the LPC, yes, For example, that doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah, it doesn't
I
either.
don't, that doesn't mean La Plata County to me. And so I'm challenged by that. I really like calling it out because it also puts you on the map, like La Plata, right there. I understand what you're saying. I agree with that, but it's just been a challenge for me.
Okay.
You know, I also think it's what happens when you get to the page. So, and not to be designing the website, because that's not what you need, but like when you get to the page, it would be neat to have a map and have Durango, Ignacio, Bayfield, have there be some graphic that shows, I think what you're saying, Eva, is just this collaboration and 4 entities. And as long as we're showing that on the landing page, would that meet what you're saying?
I think so. I guess for some reason, I just had in my head that our URL would have RHA in it. I think initially, so I'm just taking it in as La Plata Housing.
Well, we can pursue a URL that has rha.laplata.gov.
And I might even jump in. We did also consider that heavily, but because there are just so many other regional housing authorities across the state and across the
You're
nation.
afraid we'll get
Was
directed
why
to some other county.
we felt that La Plata Housing was like simultaneously tied to where we are and it tied to what we do. Kind of communicate well. And I'll also add that very few people search by URL nowadays. Normally it's just people type
Words.
La Plata RHA into Google. And then we can, that's already
They don't
discussed.
even know
make sure
what
that
the
links-
They don't even know what the URL is.
Yeah, that's
That's true. That's
Yeah,
true. Okay.
just
Well,
words.
this is why it's conversation.
It's good. Building a spaceship. Yeah,
Well, we'll secure multiple URLs to
sounds good.
really, whether it's abbreviated or full, it's not that expensive to do.
So one of the challenges I think we face is that historically, housing authorities have really only dealt in the very low income spectrum of housing. We're different. And I think probably a lot of other housing authorities now are trying to morph into addressing the next level because they're just as disenfranchised in terms of finding housing as people who are very low income because there's the availability. So I think it is important that as we move forward that we think about an image transition that so people don't disregard us because they think we're a housing authority and we only do, Section 8 housing and deeply subsidized housing. And so they don't even think to go on our website because they don't understand that we're actually, morphing into an area of dealing with that, with people up to 120, 160 AMI. It's a real transition. So the nom de plume of being an authority is a negative in terms of people understanding who we are and what we are.
And I think the landing page helps with that. The whole concept of so you land there and it's what kind of housing it is. I mean, it's right there. It gives you all the spectrum that we handle and all that kind of thing. Because I agree with you. I don't want us to get pigeonholed. So I think the La Plata Housing helps us not get pigeonholed. Any more discussion on this? So in general, yes.
All right, briefly, Mark Garcia just said in the chat that he's logging off and that he will try to connect from the road.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Mark. So just by a nod of heads, are we all fine with this direction? Because I don't think we need to vote on this.
So I'm good with it.
Okay, cool. All right. Michael, next.
So I'll go ahead and in terms of logos, we'll just present a couple to the board, probably next board meeting, and just move forward with development and have a placeholder there, if that's good with you. JJ, you want to talk about the recording process?
So this was a question that sprung from our last meeting, and you guys asked me to host this discussion topic. So as we are working on developing this website and building that out, the decision has to be made as to what our policy will be for posting recordings. We obviously on Zoom it is recording currently, like as we speak. And so then, and I am obviously doing minutes as well as required by law. But so then, do we want to have these visual and audio recordings posted on that website as well? And that's a decision that the board needs to decide what they would like to do with that.
I think the minutes as well as the recording would be a very good thing to do.
Yeah. If you can do 3 columns, we do agenda, minutes, and audio.
Yeah.
And then we're, visuals. So it's just like you can go, well, what were they talking about? Go to the agenda, go to the minutes, and then the audio. It's really transparent.
We call it media or something like that, not because we'd also have the visual too. So yeah, we do the same thing.
I just want to say, coming from SIPA doesn't have as many bells and whistles as Civics Plus that we have now. So just want to be very clear that SIPA has kind of that's why it's free. That's why the platform is not as robust as Durango's or now Bayfield. I mean, it's nice to have more capability. So I just want to make sure that.
We'll see what we can do, and if
Yeah.
there's any problem, you'll let us know.
And I think,
I'm fairly confident we should be able to find a way to post them.
Yeah.
It may just be a
Even
link
a
to a
link.
private YouTube video, it's what it might just very limited. Yeah. And then just like along with that, I have as from your guys' input last week, you notice the minutes included in your packet do have little timestamps next to each agenda item, so that does link directly to the recording. Obviously, since we don't have that website up, I recorded that up. If anyone needs recording, we're happy to provide that to you. It just kind of lives in the cloud right now, and we have like a link and a password to that right now. So if anyone should require
That's wonderful. I think that's very helpful.
Oh, I'm the next thing too. And then we did just want to update you guys briefly. This is, at least for 2023, going to be our regular meeting space. This second Thursday every month, 2 o'clock here in the Center for Innovation is where we will be meeting. We have those reserved through all of 2023, with the exception of February. February was the 1 month where they had something going on here during that time. So we've already made alternate arrangements. Just want to let you guys know that next month, and only next month, we will be in the Durango Chamber of Commerce building. But still same time, the same Zoom link will work for those who attend through Zoom. Just so that everyone is aware, we will not be here at the Center for Innovation. We will be at the Durango Chamber of Commerce.
what's that address?
23.
2301.
Right across from high school.
Main Avenue.
Yeah, directly across from Durango High School.
And it's
It is
kind of,
pretty
it's
good.
kind of hard to see.
Yeah.
It's at an angle, and there's a really nice parking lot.
Just never been there.
Yeah.
Used to be a train there.
Parking can be difficult there. And it's not easier across the street at the high school. There is some parking on Second Avenue, right behind the chamber. So if you come in and the parking lot's full, I would recommend just going out, hanging left and parking there.
Is there a way across the creek, or however you get into the chamber, or do you have to walk all the way around the block?
You'd have to walk across. Yeah.
There's a bridge, like I've had to do that once or twice. There's a bridge that like is nearby. So if you park across the creek on like that main road there, it'll just be a little bit of walking around, but nothing that is too bad.
Excellent, thank you. All righty, so on to decision items. Number 2, Housing Colorado Renewal.
Yes, this was awesome. Yeah, so we received, well, actually, I should say, Laura from Region 9 received communications intended for the RHA, and she passed those along to us. We're working on making sure that they stop going to Region 9 and then come to us more permanently. But we did receive from Housing Colorado, it is included in your packets. They sent us both an invoice and a membership campaign letter. I think this will tie in nicely because Mike, you were also going to reach out to them as well, which is I think the next agenda item. But essentially, they're just asking if we want to renew our membership. We have 60 days from the time they reached out to make a decision on that, so we're still well within that time frame. And so it's just a question to the board of whether or not you want us to file the paperwork to renew membership with Housing Colorado.
And do you want to remind us and the community of the benefit of being a member?
Yeah, it pertains mostly towards advocacy. They have a large summit or like conference kind of thing once a year. Many other typical benefits of a membership-based organization. And I think most of that is outlined in the letter. Oh, which I should also say, if anyone is on Zoom and needs access to the packet, it is available on the current website, which is just LPC/RHA.
I can provide a couple additional
I thought you might.
benefits, yes.
So good.
So I actually, as a board member, joined through this organization, so I didn't have to do that through the city of Durango. They have a lot of great webinars and tutorials and connectivity throughout the state, which is a great resource for us as well as municipalities locally. I also attended the housing conference in Summit County for a 3-day conference, which was a wonderful conference to be at. A lot of energy, a lot of excitement to talk about housing, a lot of ways to navigate through some of this, lessons learned, best practices. I get their monthly newsletter via email every month. They also have a platform to post job positions. I was able to use the housing coordinator job posting through this avenue to also get out the word out about positions. You can also use them to post RFPs as well. So a lot of good resources for $345. This is a good membership to keep.
And don't they advocate? Don't they have a lobbyist?
Yes, they do
Yeah,
have a
so they're
lobbyist.
lobbying at the Capitol.
They sure do.
Yeah,
Yes,
I know we've gotten asked to testify through that organization
yes.
and companion ones.
They also hosted the statewide outreach event that many of us attended.
Oh, really?
That was put on by Housing Colorado here locally, that brought Division of Housing and CHAFA down, that was at the college. That was put on through Housing Colorado as an example locally, so.
So do we have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion in favor of the 2023 amount of $345.
I'll second.
For the Housing Colorado?
Yep.
Second.
Eva seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any further discussion?
Double second.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Kristen. Okay, so that passes, excellent. On to discussion updates, Colorado Housing Update and Policy Committee with Mike and Marsha.
Well, I can start from what I know. I don't know about the Colorado Housing. That was, I think, on your list, Mike, to call them and just see if they have any updates. But through our two organizations, I'm not going to give you a comprehensive list here, but Colorado Counties Inc. and Counties and Commissioners acting together, the big ticket housing bills that we see coming forth is short-term rental reform legislation. And that's looking at a number of issues. I think it's one of the things is looking at changing the assessment category from residential to commercial, which is just like, I mean, and that's going to be a heavy lift. Okay, so, but it could not only bring in more money, but it really creates a level playing field with hotels.
Exactly.
So that is one. We heard a war story the other day that, anyway, a house that was specifically built in the county with 9 rooms that, you know, is like a hotel.
Yeah.
Proposition 123, that is implementation of that and looking at how that's going to work. So that's one. A statewide housing advisory board to advise the legislature on housing matters. And then giving local, so a fourth one really is giving governments a right of first refusal to buy affordable housing and mobile homes. And I don't think all of these are even bills yet. They might be emerging bills. And then there's some level 2 ones. One thing that looked interesting to me is ad valorem taxes, potentially supporting legislation which would give counties the authority to appropriate monies from sources other than these types of taxes to multi-jurisdictional housing authorities. So that would just be one more tool in the toolkit. And then there on the CCI list is allowing a secure voter approval to remove Tabor prohibition on new increased real estate transfer tax. So that would be another tool in the toolkit. So these are all going. Mike, do you want to talk about the land use bill?
What?
The land use bill?
Well, yeah.
Let me know.
Well, it's not a bill yet, but anyway, we do know that out of the, what the committee was called. But anyway, there is a lot of discussion about land use regulations at the state level. We're not sure where that's going to land up, so it's something we're just going to have to really monitor. We do monitor the county, and certainly there might be a time when opportunity for this group to weigh in on any legislation that does come forward out of that. Some of it's pretty, could be pretty onerous in terms of, I would say, an intrusion of state power into local authority over land use regulation, and could be a real, really dampen ability, especially in non-home rule communities, for approving things like affordable housing. If they're, depending on where they are and how the state ends up constructing the regulations that they're looking at doing. So I guess I just have to say, there's more to come. And as it does, then we'll have to discuss whether it's something you want to weigh in on.
Where that's coming from is the governor believes that, right or wrong, that the affordable housing problem in Colorado is a zoning problem. So what he wants to do is create, and we're just kind of say, okay, we can disagree or agree with that, but what's the tool that you are going to put in place to go with that philosophy? And it's about encouraging densities and encouraging higher types of density building. And I think it's just really having an eye towards our own land use codes and authorities. So we don't have a bill yet, and it kind of morphed from this to this to this. So, you know, the session only opened this week, right? So it's early. Yeah, and tons of questions, I'm sure, right?
So inclusionary zoning and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And Chair, the right of first refusal discussion scares me to death, because that can be used in such a broad brush, and it affects lenders, it affects everybody. It devalues real estate immediately because you don't have the ability to sell your property at market. So it's potentially, depending on how it's written, obviously, could be a disaster.
Sure.
I think it's already in place for mobile home parks. So we don't have the right to sell it to our children.
Not for, but this one gives governments the right to have that, now there's that whole law around the the time period and all that.
I thought the mobile home authority group underneath DOLA, I thought they already gave themselves that power.
Okay.
So we had a
Something to
mobile
check
home court that changed hands. And we looked into it to find out, I think Nicole may have a little more information on that, is that you really have to take them and file a lawsuit regarding that versus just that you can't transfer it. So that's a current step anyway that we found that.
Does that give anybody the right to file the suit?
I just remember that we looked into it and there was a change of hands, and of course it didn't change the housing for those that lived in the mobile home court. But on the other hand, we looked into who would be taking issue with that. Well, it could be the town, it could be the county, it could be somebody that lived there or whatever else.
Well, and I don't mean to get off the rails here, so I apologize, but I've developed a lot in California, and there's a law called CEQA there, which is the environmental law. And it gives everybody and their brother a right to hold up a project, and you want to squelch affordability. California's effectively done that because it just gives every group an ability to file suits. And most of the environmental groups are well lawyered, and that's how they make their money, and their funding is through their lawsuits and settlements. And so that's why housing gets so expensive. And so I would caution, I know we don't control that, but as you see it going down that path, that is, in my view, a sin because you have taken a generation of homeownership away in probably 2 generations now in the state of California because of that law. And I've done developments and you get sued immediately. And you just have to write that in terms of the cost of your asset.
Well, and it's one thing when you think about the mobile home laws and trying to extend if a park became for sale. Like, let's just address what the issue is. If the issue is that the timing of a seller of a mobile home park and having a potential buyer out there so quick, and that the owners can't form a co-op to get their, let's just use West Side as the example, right? With the current state law, it was 90 days.
Right.
So if there's trying to fix, which I think they had been originally talking about extending that, and that may have already gone through.
I think that did go through.
To the 180 days or whatever.
Yeah.
When I've seen the first right of refusal kick in is primarily for when it goes into foreclosure. So in a deed restriction, in that particular case, if the homeowner gets upside down and can't cure it, instead of losing that deed restriction to fall off and losing that affordability perpetuity long-term, oftentimes there's a 30-day parameter clause that says the government, a housing authority, homes fund, someone like that can come in and acquire it to preserve it, and then releases it back out into the open market to sell it back again. That's when I've seen the first right of refusal work and kick in and doesn't affect the financing. But it's foreclosure
But
oftentimes.
you'll see the banks and the mortgage lenders fiercely fight that because it does devalue the asset. It takes it off the market.
Well, that's why no one wants, that mentality is why no one wants to do the deed restriction.
But having the deed restriction on it already puts a value on it.
Already.
And so that, I think that's already been accommodated for in that conversation. It's just the fact that the government can make sure it stays affordable.
Yeah.
Right,
That makes sense.
that's the goal.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we wouldn't want it extended to beyond affordable or mobile home parks, I would think, but this is really good input. I mean, we'll bring this stuff up if you guys want it, and then, you can always look up the bill numbers. I don't want to take 2 hours of your time, but we spend a lot of time on this, and I'm sure CML has other, you're tracking on housing stuff too, especially the land use bill that is gonna very likely come forth.
Meeting once a month, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Any further discussion or anything we need to do about this one? The fund balance policy, once again, that's just an idea for us to think about. I actually would like to possibly put that into the economic alliances bucket, just to do some research about what do other RHAs do. Is there a fund balance policy? If not, we don't have to worry about it. If there is, maybe we want to have some discussion about it. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Development of a dashboard to gauge progress of 617 unit goal.
Yeah, I threw this out last time, and I think I think partly it's a capacity issue for how you're feeling, Sarah. The idea would be that when we got the root strategy report in 21, it said 617 for La Plata County to start making a dent on, affordable housing. Huh?
Annually?
Uh,
I think that was the upfront.
Yeah,
And then
no.
annually, there was an additional.
Yeah, it ended up being thousands. So the vision would be like with what you're doing, like the stuff that the city's doing. When I was thinking this through, it's like, wow, this immediately becomes really complicated because is it new units? Is it units like West Side where how many units are being preserved for affordable housing? 90?
There's 70 being preserved, and they're looking at adding another 30 plus
Yeah,
if they get the funding to do the full redevelopment.
plus Triangle is 12.
Well, I think that includes Triangle.
Oh, okay, so 90, so do you include, and then do you include rental? And so when I was thinking it through, I mean, I love this idea of a dashboard, right? Like, what's the goal and how are we doing? As with anything, it becomes infinitely more complicated, but I just would throw it out for discussion. Maybe it's a year 2 RHA thing. I could see it taking a tremendous amount of time. But if we want to, it's kind of back to the public input we received, show results to the community. And maybe they're not results that, that's whether the Catalyst Fund created it or the city created it or whatever. Just an idea, but I think I want to be careful we're not overloading you with 15 new ideas at every meeting that wasn't in your original scope of work.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Eva, but that's the kind of data for the city anyway, that the housing division has every month anyway.
Yes.
And so it would be easy, I think, to, you might just have a spreadsheet that everybody accesses, right? And you fill it in once a month or something.
Yes.
And then you could have all those different categories, like, do we call this new housing or is it just preserved? What do we call it? Put that in there, and then we can figure out, we can have discussions about how do we want to evaluate that.
Mhm.
Well, and that's one of the things that I wouldn't say that I see it as a challenge, but I've paused on it for purposes. I mean, there are several city councilors that really envision this glossy dashboard to show all of these units. It's great and all, but at the same time, realistically, those units take many, many months to develop and secure, just with agreements and incentives and acquisition and whatever else gets involved that I'm going through on several projects. And so I'm finding a better way and a more meaningful way is like using the word secured. Where am I at in the project pipeline of getting these units secured to be built, at the same time trying to explain and do outreach on preservation, and that involves programming and other aspects. Because if we just did a dashboard to say, how have we met the mark? I don't know that that will be a graph that's gonna be very large necessarily, right?
Like more how many.
So that's why I haven't done it so much on the city site yet. I've built projects, I've built current residential projects in review with different statuses to help illustrate those processes where the outcome would be on a pie graph. Yes, we've achieved 8 units here or 9 units there that are built and habitable now by someone.
Maybe it's a kind of a pipeline graph in a sense. So that the far side over here, and maybe graph's the wrong word, but the far side over here is they're available for occupancy, because that's our goal, right? And you see where they are in the pipeline, and we may only have 2 places in the pipeline, like original, submittal, and then they're what you call secured.
Yeah.
So that you know they're gonna end, you're 99%.
So maybe it's not upwards, it's this way.
Yeah, that's, however, you know,
However you wanna
maybe
do
that's one way to look at it, because we don't want to lose sight of the progress that we're making,
No, you
just
don't.
because it'll take another year before they're
That's
actually available for occupancy.
Especially if the entitlements are secured and it's underway, you know, like.
And they
you're-
pulled building permits.
Right, yeah, yeah.
That's a whole different part that I'm trying to portray, where a lot of people think of a dashboard of like, this unit's habitable and it's available and it's for sale or it's for rent, you know, that kind of thing. And so we're in a spectrum right now working to achieve those. And so that's how I vision long-term with the dashboard, but yeah.
Yeah, and sorry, let me say one more thing, Melvin. We do have one city councilor who, just the fact that the plans have gone to the planning department, considers those built. I mean, like, we have 1,800 units that are coming up. Well, we all know that that's not what happens. And so I think your idea of benchmarking along the way is critical. Yeah. So Clark and Pat, did you both have?
You did, you raised your
I
hand.
was curious whether Bayfield, Ignacio, and LaPlatte County have kind of similar things that they track and put on the website.
We do track that, the lots that have been created, building permits that have went out, COs that have been completed, so we have that information. And, you know, in fact, Nicole's doing her annual report, so we'll have that information for 2022, so.
All I'm thinking about is just, you know, having these folks have a one-stop shop at each one of the jurisdictions to be able to pull the information. And I don't think it has to be really complicated. I understand your continuum, but, you know, I think if you have entitlements, it's one thing. If you have a plans approved, if you have a building permit and you have a CO, you know, I don't think you want to make it too complicated, because at the end of the day, we want a CO, okay? But you need all these other things to happen for that to occur. And entitlements is one thing, but to your point, 1,800 units ain't happening, because, you know, interest rates went like that and construction just went like that, right? So the reality of our world changes daily. And so if it has a building permit and it has a CO, those are tangible results, you know? Because if it has a building permit, it's gonna get a CO. Just saying.
Just a matter of when.
And I guess the question I have, do we want a common definition? Because I don't see this as all housing. That wasn't what Root said. It was affordable housing. And then so I think you would, this is where it gets complicated of like, is it something that 120 or 160 AMI and below could afford? Because I'm interested in the all housing conversation, but I was more thinking back to Root. If they're saying like, if you're going to say you're doing affordable housing in LaPlatte County and the jurisdictions, you need 617 units.
And that's part of the problem, is we don't actually have any control unless they're deed restricted.
Right.
Over how that's going to end up. Because you'll get developers who say, oh, we'll rent them for 90% AMI or 120% AMI, and it doesn't work out that way for them. And I don't mean that they're just doing it but it doesn't work out that way. And so I think that's a really interesting conversation, because every unit of housing that we put on the market makes our job that much easier, even if it isn't deed restricted. Deed restricted obviously goes right to the core of what we're trying to do, but every time we add housing units, whether it's rental or home ownership, it helps with the overall market.
Yeah, that is true.
And so
people move around and
and so you're adding more units, more inventory, right? So it's supply and demand, and it doesn't happen fast enough is our real problem. If it could happen faster, we wouldn't even need deed restrictions. You know, really, if we could do it really, really rapidly and get housing out there, because the market on its own would take care of that. But We're not in that space. We won't be in that space for at least a decade,
Generation.
minimum, yeah. So that's,
And all housing is easier to illustrate
Yeah,
quickly.
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah.
coming with a complex, metadata for this, what they're looking at. I said, people just want to see something really clear.
yeah.
And housing, I think any housing you build is gonna better the community.
and we do the, is it deed restricted and is it workforce? I mean, we.
It's really getting hard to keep it to one page and the font has gotten quite small. But I have remodified, which you guys will be getting, city council will be getting this because I just wrapped it up. But yeah, so I track the pipeline of projects. If it's 4 or more units to that level,
Not based on income.
not based on income or anything, just what's in our pipeline in our planning world, right? Then I track it by approval status. Then I track it by if they pulled the building permit. And then I track it by getting the CO. And then I have columns that say, did I secure it for affordable purposes, right? So it meets that, it won't get that checkbox unless I've secured a contractual agreement that will lead to affordable units. It only meets that category in that bucket for that purpose. Then I have workforce, if they just chose, to do below market rate rental or something like that with some kind of commitment. And then I have market rate. And then I break it down by the number of units at the very end of the column. So I just try to keep it digestible in a format that I found quarterly was a bit onerous, that the projects weren't changing that much in that realm. And so I did it in May, June, and then I've done it for December, and that makes much more sense, I think, for capacity too, and just more meaningful with that snapshot. And then I just captured all of the data for pulled permits for the year, as well as COs, with a comparison over the last couple of years. So we get that snapshot of that ebb and flow of what's happening in development. So it's been a process, but again, what did I think met the mark? How trackable was it? What's meaningful? And I'll be sharing that with city council, so.
Good.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, and it's a little more complicated in the county when we talk about entitlement and what is entitled out there right now. I mean, we have 3,000 parcels that you can come in and pull a building permit and put a modular home on today. No land use approval, no reviews, just come in and pull your building permit. So in terms of the availability of the opportunity, if that's what we were looking at, it's obviously not solving the problem because they're sitting there and for various reasons they're not getting, developed. But I mean, that's a huge existing entitlement that isn't complicated by any land use process.
I guess you probably need to identify what the hurdle is there.
And water and sewer.
Well, you have to drill a well and put in an on-site wastewater treatment facility.
Access,
Pardon?
access sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think, maybe
That's why I
entitlement,
reduced it to 3,000. They're actually 4,000, but I cut it down to 3,000. Some of them.
maybe entitlements for the county doesn't mean the same thing, and so.
Yeah, that is true.
Entitlements for the jurisdictions, the cities and towns where they have municipal water and sewer and they have density ability.
That's why I brought the point up.
It's good. So maybe you just worry
We're not
about.
going to put that in there and say, oh, we've got, we can tomorrow build 3,000 houses in the county, even though.
You're gonna have some agriculture people
But,
doing this. See, they're making lots.
But it's not necessarily where
It's
we
not for
want to see
housing.
growth.
I might, Mike, I think.
Yeah, I think we can work with Eva and Mike and figure out the spirit of, I think we understand the objective. If you guys would give us an opportunity to work with staff and come up with an idea of how we check all the boxes. And I think we can baseline it January 2023.
Yeah.
And then figure out what a good reporting period might be, whether it's quarterly, biannually, and then what does that visual look like? And I think it's a very valuable tool and that we absolutely should do it.
Okay.
And I love that it's on our page.
Exactly.
I mean,
housing.
I'm going to continue to do what I do on our pages and that, but I would love to see that cumulative, some kind of snapshot, some way to be more transparent as an alliance than just what's the city doing or what's Bayfield doing. Like that to me is so much more meaningful in the work that the RHA is trying to achieve. And I think it makes sense to be on our page
It does.
than just the city site.
And it's a
So-
service to the community. I still would like some metric of what is affordable,
Sure.
you know, and so like, I like that you're right, your last column on your spreadsheet is, have you signed it off as affordable, you know? And so we'd have to look at some definitions, but I think the point about what is housing going on in general is a fair one. So anyway, if you guys, I guess my thought is see how this fits with your work schedule and everything else you're trying to do, but I think it'd be a super great service to the community.
Well, and then the page isn't just minutes and agendas and recordings.
Yeah.
I think this is our foundation of what's to come for the work that we're all trying to work towards. It's a great way for us to like blast that out there. And then with a press release, when we get it built, you know, of like, hey, community, you can look here now, centralize it, bring it back to the RHA. So
100% support that.
Great, thanks.
I'll volunteer my time to help.
I'll give ideas on email.
Any more discussions on that? Okay, so let's go to member updates then. I'm going to start at the bottom of the list this time. Member at large, Pat.
Okay, well, I emailed to everybody the grant matrix with a few updates. Just as an overall, there's from my count, and you guys probably have more information than I do, but there's about $8 million still in play between all the entities right now, pursuing monies at the state level through grants. And so, you know, I know that the town of Bayfield resubmitted Cinnamon Heights through the HB 1304 and 1377. So hopefully, you know, second time's a charm for 2.8 million or some level thereof, right? So I applaud all of you for pursuing these things on behalf of each jurisdiction. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to drive behind Home Depot, but I would suggest you do and see the new multifamily project under development with modular units being trucked in from Boise, Idaho. That candidly is the future of our housing if you want to try to address affordability.
They brought the crane in, so I think they're setting them.
Oh, I drove by today and they're setting.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, so, and FCI is running that, so I talked to Mike Fouts quite a bit about it. It's a fascinating test, you know, it's a Lego project basically, right? So we'll see how that goes, but I think that's a really important first step. And whether it's panelized construction, we're actually trucking these things in. You know, the reality is, you know, we're still the place that has the train that has no rail service, right? It's known for its train that has no rail service. So, you know, we need to be creative.
So the cost of the shipping them in must not be prohibitive.
It was very expensive and diesel went up, and so it was delayed by probably 3 or 4 months. Diesel's come down somewhat depending on where you're at. It's not down here, but my wife was just recently in Oklahoma. There was $1 less per gallon. So just saying anyway.
And if I may, to that point, Eva, you might give me the actual number, but they've committed to
Yes.
Affordable market rates, rentals.
Yes, this
And I
is one
think
of my
that's
first
because of what they
projects.
envision they can do with that.
Yeah, one of my first projects I started with here. And we got really creative on the forefront with their building envelope to start. And kind of did the Lego act with the exercise of like, where could we change some 3 bedrooms, get some more 1 bedrooms, get some more 2s, work within their parking. We maximized and did some density bonus. So that was another key player in the project. So we went from 83 units to 89. And then from there, we were able to secure 14 units that are rent restricted. Worked through those negotiations, worked through all the contractual agreements, worked through the covenant. That was a learning process for a lot involved, but really proud of the product that we've come out with now because it's a template, which is what we needed for the community. We needed that template. And working with another partner, Housing Solutions of the Southwest, that'll be going before council here coming soon to get the administration of that. So they'll be doing the income qualifying checks in conjunction with the property manager. The timeline, I think we went through the processes of planning and approval last year, but to have units constructed by June. That's the timeline. I mean, with this modular, and they actually last year had to put $1 million down in Boise just to get in that pipeline.
Wow,
Before we even had the approvals or anything else in the process.
that's
And
incredible.
I think I had been here 4 weeks. And just hit the ground running. So yeah, so we'll have 14 units there.
Right behind Home Depot.
Yeah.
Yeah, in between Rocket and,
Oh,
Kind
okay.
of across from
There's
Fresno
that
down
many
there.
units that can go in there, huh?
well, they did it really cool too. They're not straight like this, they're at angles and everything. So I was like, that's great, you guys. Thank you for being so creative.
Yes, and not just the
More land,
traffic
more
box.
density on land.
Yeah.
Well, and it just makes it look better
Looks
too. You want to
better,
live there and it had,
Yeah.
And they didn't go in with like a bunch of amenities, right? Just keep it simple, keep it clean. The idea was how many units, maximize that. They've got some green space and stuff, but they've got the trail and stuff right there. I'm like, you don't
Yeah.
need the pool and the other things that cause the rent to be more exorbitant than it needs to be.
Well, and antidote to that is we built 171 units of multifamily at Three Springs when I was there. The first phase was 101 units. And it was 100% leased before we got our CO without being able to walk a single unit.
Wow.
Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of demand, and that was 6 years ago.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
and yeah, some more units have been built, but the need is still greater. Last thing I have, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of long-winded here.
We're helping you digress.
Yeah. Mike and Sarah, welcome Sarah, first of all. I didn't say that earlier, and I should have. Welcome to Durango, welcome to the RHA. One of I think the preeminent plans for the RHA in my mind is finding the right options, plural, for sustained funding.
Yep.
To where we can be a resource for all the other entities that actually build this product, okay? I see us as the funnel of funds. And what I would be looking from you is options, recommendations, and timeline to figure that out. I think that's the most important thing that the RHA can do. And we really are going to rely on you, Sarah, as the quarterback to help us with that.
That's in my wheelhouse, so will do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. La Plata County.
Mike, you want to talk about the DOLA, the west side
Oh,
moving forward?
well, we're just in the second phase. The 31st is the deadline for us to submit some additional supplemental information. We made it past the first hurdle. So I guess we'll see what happens. One of the things I think they've asked everybody, what's the minimum could you reduce your project to, and what would the impact be? So of course, I'm working very closely with Elevations, who owns the property, because we're basically we'll be the fiscal agent, and we have to be the applicant because they're not eligible for this particular round of money. So they're the ones who are really constructing the project and everything, but we're the applicant, and hopefully it goes well. I think the feedback that we got was very positive. I think they saw it as really being a great project. I will just share this with you because Elevations is also pursuing some of the other money, some of the 1304 and the 1377 money, grant, the transformational housing, whatever it's called. They run into a little wrinkle, at least right now. They're trying to work around it, but they're being told by DOLA, and this is one of those things that never makes any sense, even though their plan is to actually build, initially, I think they're talking about building an additional 5 or 6 units. They have space to build that, and then making that available for some of the tenants, some of the existing residents to move to, and thereby vacating their units and then being able to do them in the next phase. But they're being told that even though they're not displacing residents, in other words, we're not forcing them to move, that it still falls under the federal guidelines. I'm not sure I agree with this, but they're saying it falls under the federal guidelines. So not only do you have to compensate them as a tenant, but also as being in an ownership position because they actually own the building, but they're also a renter. So you have to double pay them to give them an opportunity to move to a new unit.
That can't be right. That's terrible.
I agree. It's insane,
That's
but
insane.
that's what they're being told right now, which is.
What are they saying? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I was flicking this like email that was crisis.
Even though they're building new units first and then providing them and making them available for existing residents to move to, not forcing them,
Right.
not kicking them out of their existing ones, that they're subject to the relocation provisions under federal law. And not only for the owner being as owners, but also being as renters. So there are actually two compensation packages, which is going to be a big hit to being able to have this affordable project.
That you would have to pay the individuals through these laws.
Yeah, because you were moving them from their home somewhere
Even
else,
though they're
even though it's a
not,
better place. and
That
it's
is
in the
ridiculous.
same.
is, I mean, does that make any sense?
No.
No,
I mean,
what can we do?
How much more can
well,
you stop it?
you know, I don't know, I've asked them to look into it and I'm looking into it as well, because I believe that the funding that is being available for 1304 has been moved through the state funding so that it is not actually directly ARPA money, but it is money that they have allocated to housing. And the original source was ARPA money that they were able to put into their general fund to replace their operational impacts.
So it might be state funding then instead of.
But I think,
No.
I don't know, I think that they have kind of, if it's a policy decision that they made at the state level, then I think there might be some flexibility. Might have to go to the governor, you know, to say, hey,
Yeah.
you realize this is a really tough idea. So anyway, I don't know, but you know, we're talking and hopefully we can help them in some way to get through this hurdle, because it means all of those additional funds are
Would be
going to
absorbed.
be locked into this kind of a scenario. Now, we may be the only ones that have this problem, but anyway, it's kind of
Broomfield
crazy.
addressed that with a mobile home park by having the Habitat for Humanity partner with them. And as they build new houses, the people moved out of their trailers into the new houses, and that opened up more space for Habitat to put in more new houses.
Well, that's what this situation
exactly
is, but
what
they're
it
saying
Yeah.
because of this source of money being ARPA money, or they're claiming it ultimately was ARPA money, that it's subject to these federal requirements for relocation.
That's cockamamie.
It doesn't make any sense.
Anything else?
Well, I just want to let everybody know, so we, I think I said we met in a retreat last year to sort of say what's our role in housing, and obviously the RHA is a big role. We know that looking at our code is one of the things we need to do. We think there's some ways that we can tweak our code. We couldn't do that until we got we can't do that until we get what we think is the proper capacity in our planning department. And Kevin Hall came out of retirement and is going to be our interim community planning director. And we've hired a firm to go in and get as many projects cleared that we think we can. Because we know there's, a real critique, and it's fair, about time of processing projects. And so there's an outside firm that will come in, and the ones that are the easy, kind of low-hanging fruit that we can get cleared, we're going to do that. And then we're going to do a national search for a community planning director. And in that, housing will be one of the lenses that we look at. So I think some progress there, and then that'll give us the staff capacity to really be able to look at our code and say, what can we do? What does land, because we have currently a reserved chapter in our land use code for housing. So we need to get that remedied. So that's all I have.
All righty. On to Town of Ignacio.
You saw on Pat's spreadsheet that Mark's got some additional funding that he's going for the Rock Creek property. That's 40 spaces or 40 units. A little bit of an update on the Timber Age. They are going to do the build in Three Springs instead of Ignacio. So that gives them, like I was explaining just a few minutes ago, an hour and a half ago, it gives them a better market because we don't know exactly what those costs are going to be to build this prototype. And Three Spring is going to give them additional people that can potentially afford the more expensive product. And the question was, is it going to be affordable housing? The numbers that I saw originally, I can't call it affordable housing. So, but I think it can get there. But you got to start somewhere with a prototype. So the big issue that we are grappling with, I know this really doesn't have to do with housing. It's going to affect, I think, almost everybody in Southern Colorado, is natural gas prices. So for November, our natural gas price was $5.44. In December, we were charging $10.29. And we just got the bill for the January gas, and that's going to be $32.97. Let me put that in perspective. If your gas bill was $108 in November, that equates to $659 if you use the exact same amount in January. So I see that as a 606% increase. We get all of our gas in Ignacio from the Southern Ute Utilities, and so we've been trying to work with them to figure some levers that we can reduce some of the builds that we put in there for operating and things of that nature. The people we're trying to help the most are the people that are going to suffer the most right now. And that's for the foreseeable future. I think if we had to buy spot gas a week ago, it would have been at $42 an MMCF. So it's not getting any better. This problem exists throughout Southwest. So this is all the way from Gallup to Wyoming. This is not an Ignacio problem. You may not see it immediately in Durango and Bayfield and some other areas, but you will see it. It's coming at you, and it's going to come at you hard. So utilities, that's a problem.
So we have in the city of Durango, we have a utilities rebate program for low-income people. Do you have something similar?
We do, but our gas bill was $80,000 a month ago. It's $300,000 this month. So even our utility, what's that?
For the town.
For the town, just, because the town buys it from the tribe and then we reallocate to the homes. But the tribe has the exact same problem we've been working with. And they're buying it
This
on.
is related to California is
It
what
is
the big linchpin, right?
Yeah,
So is it
California.
temporary, or are the trends looking at this will
Right
continue?
now, the trends aren't looking good. So the California is driving this. So we get our gas off of the El Paso line, which is now owned by Kinder Morgan. So our gas is being produced outside of Ignacio. And there's zero transportation. I mean, it's basically going to 318 and coming right back into Ignacio. And it's costing 606% more than it did in November. So, which affects everything. Like you said, when diesel went up, that affected everything. Groceries, so hello.
Well, the only silver lining is it'll be delayed, but it will have a dramatic impact on tax revenues.
Yes, it will.
And that might be a windfall that could be looked at in terms of trying to mitigate some of the impacts to people who are disadvantaged.
So, sorry to bring that up. I know that's not regional housing, but it's a reality. So, thank you. I'm done.
It's a reality, though.
It is.
Renters, I mean, people that are already living on the edge and paycheck to paycheck, that's a huge increase.
One of our neighbors, I call them neighbors because they're our tenant, but they're still neighbors. He said he's making more in his paycheck this year than he has ever, and he's got less because of his expenses. And I think that's the message we're hearing across the United States. Inflation, we can call it a lot of things. There's a lot of political statements we could make, but the struggle is real.
Well, and that's what'll put more people into homelessness.
Yep.
It is. It's going to drive things. So sorry about that.
After that.
All that great news. I know.
City of Durango, do you have some things?
Let's see,
In addition to what we've already discussed.
Right. Yeah, just working on refining all of the details that are needed for the DOLA application to really get those projects honed in. We are one community of 3 in the state that might have potential to be awarded for 2 projects.
Great.
So we're going in creative, we're going in innovative. I'm putting all of it into it and see what we can do. We were asked also to reduce, which we originally, I think, had gone in with several million in ask, and then refined it from there during the pre-app to 3 million in ask. And then I got a phone call, which was great, unexpected. So I was like pivoting quickly of like, oh, this is DOLA, okay. And reduced it to 1.5 million. So we're going in strong. We're going to go in with both projects. I had a meeting with Three Springs right before here, so my apologies that I was slightly late, to work through with the consultant and the Three Springs team on how to refine our scope for their particular project that will open up land for affordable housing purposes. So that's kind of a unique structure. The partnership with the Ute tribe is what's getting us competitive. They had another, when they called me, they actually had another community, didn't want to tell me who, and that's fine, that had tried to work with a nearby tribe to get something executed in a partnership. That unraveled, Durango moved up. So that's why they're encouraging me to go with both. Very strong. That being said, we're working through the Best Western motel conversion as well. They closed on that property. I think I mentioned that in November. So I'll be working on an update kind of news release probably about where that project's headed and going. But they're seeing some unforeseen costs from the NEPA study that they're going through around floodplain issues. And you can't move a building that's already there. So I have a meeting with the Best Western and Chaffa for their LIHTC application next Wednesday as well to try and navigate some of these unforeseen red tape guidance that they think applies to this particular project.
It's already there.
That's already there. And I literally, guys, it's a corner, it's like the corner of a building. Like it's not like the whole building. Mostly the parking lot and the swimming pool. That is my understanding, but it triggered an 8-step process instead of getting the NEPA to go through, and we need it to be completed to finish the funding for the $3 million congressional money. So just this like red tape of like being told one thing and navigating and trying to kind of find variances or ways to kind of work through it. It's a lot of work.
They've been tortured by vandalism. People breaking in and staying there and destroying the units, and it's like really, yes, Pat.
Just as a side note, when I worked for a number of years for the tribe, when, the tribe is a checkerboard of trust land and fee land. And so if somebody, an oil and gas company wanted to punch a well on fee land immediately adjacent to trust land, it would take them 30 days to get the permit through the COGCC. The tribe being the land being held in trust for the tribe by the federal government had to go through the NEPA process, and it exceeded 12 months at least for every well permit. So someone could come in and drain the tribe's resources by putting a well immediately next to the tribe's land and drain their gas for a year before the tribe could even get a permit from the federal government. So that's NEPA in a nutshell. I mean, I think it should be renamed bullshit, and you can put that on the record.
I can say, I actually really need to send this guy a gift basket from Durango. I have never had so much engagement, interaction from DC, from our HUD representative. I mean, this representative I have in our favor calls me, email. I mean, I've never had that from DC. I don't know what I've done differently to get the gem of a person in HUD right now to help us through. But we're working through that because the whole reason we applied for the congressional money was to offset the acquisition cost, right, not construction, because we didn't want the federal red tape of the construction costs. And I can't expend that to help them get relief to do the building part to start to rehab until the NEPA's done.
Yep.
So it's holding us up in the project because I need that completed. So we brought Chaffa to the table. We'll see where we get. I'm optimistic that that's what we just need, get the players at the table and let's just work through this because that's causing gridlock for them to start the rehab and protecting the property and securing it and all of those moving parts.
Do you need help from the senator's offices? I mean, does it get taken to that level?
I don't know. I think
Let me know.
Yeah,
I think
I'll know more.
do you know John Whitney and Helen Page?
Oh,
yeah, I mean,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
sometimes just like a call, like,
Yeah.
hey, we need this to go through because this is 3,000 of congressionally, 3 million.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know how much pull they have, but sometimes just having a senator's staff on it helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you have a HUD guy that's working.
Yeah, we have a HUD guy, and then we have Gary Dominguez from Chaffa will be on the call. So he's the person I need because HUD's already given me the form that if I can get this through, HUD to give me the form to give to Chaffa, that's the level of detail. Like I've got our ducks in a row. I just need Chaffa to like get us through the process to get it done. So Working through that, we did close the RFP for a consultant for our inclusionary zoning. We didn't get any proposals.
We didn't get any
We
proposals.
did not get any
Again.
proposals again, but I will not accept that. So I simultaneously have been talking with one of our preferred consultants that completed the needs analysis for our region. And it was all about a timing. They wanted to make sure that they could do the project justice, wanted to see if we could work with DOLA on some timelines, work with our finance director to ease that we won't need to go out to bid again. And I can successfully say we have a solid proposal as of Tuesday to work with and accept the grant award that we received from DOLA, and I can't expend until I had a consultant. So those are just the few things we're working on.
And what's really sad is that it's taking more effort than necessary, and it's slowing everybody down. It's making things more expensive, making it harder to do, making people not want to participate because everything is so difficult. Council approved in our budget expanding Eva's office. And so that'll be helpful for her to have someone to help her with these things, but you can't change the outside, and that's what is so frustrating.
It is, it really is.
So do you have anything else?
No, I have wrapped up interviews for the housing coordinator position.
Oh, good.
As of this afternoon as well, and looking forward to making a job offer. So
Let us know when that happens.
I'll let you know when that happens, yes.
So council, in February 14th and 15th, we'll be having a 2-day strategic plan retreat, and we will not be rehashing our strategic plan. What we will be doing is taking that and from that saying, what are our big projects that we need to have happen? And probably I would imagine, I can see that there's like 8 of them probably there. We'd have to isolate it down to 2, maybe 3 to focus on, and go from what are those big projects? So housing in the strategic plan is huge. The police department is another huge thing, and there's other things. But given that, what magnitude of funding do we want to provide for those key issues? And then how do they get funded? So one of the challenges that we're having right now is we have a lodger's tax discussion. We have a 2005 dedicated sales tax re-up discussion, which is a 0.5 cent that currently is split 1/4% to Parks and Rec and open space and 1/4% to the Fort Ringgold Road and library bonds. And those get paid off, and then re-up, and what do we do with that? And then also the ideas of, do we do an additional sales tax for housing, or for one of our other major things? How do we pay for these things? So that's the kind of discussion that we'll be having on the 14th and 15th. And then on the 17th, which is next Tuesday, we'll be talking specifically about the lodger's tax. We did a conversation specifically about 2005, re-up before, now about the lodger's tax, so that when we get to the retreat, we have some background. So it'll be very, very interesting to see where council comes out on that. I'm leaning toward separating housing from competing interests so that we're not fighting with each other. And so we'll see how those conversations go and what we might end up doing with that. I believe we still have time to get an initiative on the ballot in April. If it's very simple and straightforward, that would be the challenge. Otherwise, it'll be November or later. But I personally would like to see housing now.
So Kim, is the, sorry to interrupt your.
No, go.
Is your lodging tax discussion, and I'm probably behind on some Harold, sorry Harold, but is the discussion to basically go to the basic question of how you're spending lodger's tax, because you just passed the successful override question, right? Like the overage you could keep. So this is to go back and ask the basic question about, like, do you give all your money to tourism promotion, or help me understand what you're talking about.
And I think that's a really good question. So when we initially did the lodger's tax re-up last year, right?
Right.
Yeah, the year before. So when we initially did that, we set up percentages of the lodger's tax that would go to different things.
Right.
55% to sustainable marketing, and I'm going to get the numbers wrong. 25% to transportation, 14% to creative arts, and 11% to council discretion. And we set those given what the lodger's tax was currently collecting and what we thought the increase would garner. What we thought was that that would raise the contribution to sustainable marketing from about $600,000 to about $1 million or $1 million plus, somewhere in that neighborhood. It pushed it to 1.9 million. So that was not at all what we had envisioned, because COVID came in and all the tourists came and all this happened. So we're not comfortable with how that played out. Visit Durango was very comfortable with the 1 million. And so why would, they don't need 1.8 million. Now they'll probably tell us different, but in reality, our tourism is robust. We're not having trouble attracting people. The lodger's tax continues to go up. Things are going very, very well. And so, and I know Rachel's up there, but so the question becomes, what was the intent? And I've asked for the documentation that showed what our intent really originally was. What was it that we thought we were going to be providing? What was it we thought we were going to be funding Visit Durango for? And then what was the actual, way overestimation of taxes, way over actuality of taxes that came in? And then where do we take that money? So, does it go into transportation, which is a real big problem because we are not sustainable in our transportation enterprise fund. And hotels are, yes, there's hotels on Main Street and there's hotels that are within the trolley routes, but we have a lot of hotels that are outside that every single one of those guests has to get in the car and drive to downtown. And the impact that has on downtown and on our environment and on our human resources is huge. So should more money be going into transportation to provide transportation to bring those hotel guests into town? And I know some people have said from the hotel industry, well, they won't take the bus, they'll just get in their car. Well, we have to figure out a way to incentivize them. It has to be so good for them and so seamless. And then you put on the other side the stick of them driving is not good. Somehow we have to figure that all out. But that's one way of looking at it. And do we then lessen the impact, not just on our parking, but on traffic and everything else downtown? So that's where that question came back to us about, oh, this didn't work out at all the way we thought it was going to work out. And we don't want to penalize marketing by any chance. Like maybe is there a escalator clause in there that as long as the tax is continuing to increase, the marketing goes up by 5% a year. Transportation keeps the 25%, but anything over that 5% goes to transportation instead of staying with marketing. I mean, there's all sorts of
What's the
ways
formula?
you can stagger it and make it work. Yeah. So that's where we're coming from.
Right. That's helpful because we've talked about the ability and I did find out, by the way, the commissioners are the ones that have to take a reallocation of the county lodger's tax to ballot. It can only be the commissioners. So we would do a resolution. And I think it's important, and this has been talked about, if that could be funding for the RHA for sure. It's just an idea on the flip chart. So I think, we want to make sure these conversations don't get muddled, because I could see people saying like, now which lodger's tax are we talking about and which ballot are we, so that would be important. So anyway, Mike and I have had some conversations about that. But I did find out the
I think it's
commissioners
good
would put
for
it on
us
the
to
ballot.
talk about them together because,
Yeah.
originally your lodger's tax basically all went to Visit Durango.
It does now.
And your lodger's tax went way up too. So
Yes, right.
So how do you achieve the intention behind doing it and just make it work for everybody? So, okay. So, Faith?
So we are considering going to the election for a lodging tax.
Oh, wow.
Probably because we have Ezra that's considering a hotel, and we have an annexation that's considering an RV park with those small cabins and things like that. So we think it's important to have that basically, and we only have a couple Airbnbs, but I think it would be important to have that election before they come and before they're opposed to it versus after. So that is our goal in November, would be the election for that. We are working on the east intersection, a light. We have 30% engineering on the light at the east intersection of Bayfield Parkway and 160. And that will probably explode east Bayfield regarding the East Bayfield annexation. We have Cinnamon Heights on that end. We have Mustang Crossing that's going to impact that intersection. And then we have the Pine River Commons, I believe that's what it's called. That's right there, kind of the agricultural land. That's just west of the Alta or Conoco station. So that's going to impact that intersection quite a bit.
Yeah.
So we can see that all of those annexations that really were approved, we're going to see some development. That all plays into the interest rates and everything else and availability. But I'm definitely going to stop by because I saw those cubicles sitting out there because we have talked to the HOA, the Cinnamon Heights. Keep in mind, there's already 11 units that are not owned by the town. Townhomes to do manufactured, factory-built units. I don't think we have any great opposition, but we have a couple people that were really kind of offended that we would even think about that. But what I've seen in factory built is a lot of times you'll never know when it's done that they came where they were built in a factory.
I have a video I'm going to send out to everybody that has some really interesting things about that. So.
And they would be on permanent foundations. A
I'm
lot
sorry, I
of,
didn't
they would be
hear
on permanent foundations.
Yes, they would be on.
And that's, I think, you know, where folks sort of get like heartburn is when they think modular
It's gonna look like
construction.
a
They think
mobile home.
mobile home and they think non-foundational. I mean, that's just what they think.
So we continue to use the instructions. Don't you call it modular, don't call it mobile. It is
Right.
factory built.
Factory built, yeah, terminology.
And not those M words.
Katie, if you get all the annexations and building that you think you might get, what percentage of Bayfield will you double?
We're gonna
in your
double.
Your double?
Yeah, we're gonna double
Wow.
population.
Wow, that's
pretty
incredible.
easily.
It's your population's what now? I feel like I should.
2838. Just under 2,900.
2,900, so it'd be up to over 6,000.
6,000.
That's incredible.
We were not asked to apply for the 21-1271. And part of it, we went back to DOLA to find out what was the reason. So we did not hit the 7 key points that we hit the 4. So we do know that we need to do a lot of updates to our land use code. The reason that we encouraged Nicole to come to Bayfield is we have need a lot of work on our land use, not just the code, but the process and our document management as well. But we did apply, or we didn't apply, but our LOI for the, thank you, Patrick, for the 22-1304 and 1377. And we'll be applying the 1st of March, not the 1st of February, because we can apply every month. So we have that for Cinnamon Heights.
Any further discussion or?
Just one last thing on the manufactured housing. You know, I think you've all heard of Fading West Development that's based out of Buena Vista. The bigger news is they're building a much larger factory in Denver and going to be serving Denver in the Front Range in a big way. So that gives you an idea of how real that stuff is.
It's the future, like you said.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Thank you all.
No, thank you.
We'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Eva, can we chat for a minute?
Congratulations.
Wonderful. Nice job.